Zoonoids are a central component of the Guyver universe. They were biologically engineered by the creators, who were mysterious alien beings who also created humankind to serve as a biological weapon against an unknown enemy. One can think of zoonoids as mutated human beings who have been biologically optimized for fighting wars. The first zoonoids appeared about 110,000 years ago as an outcome of a bioweapons development program. At one point in time, the number and genes of zoonoids would become relatively low and diluted, but thanks to Arkenfell and Kronos, zoonoids have begun to be created again. The history and lore of zoonoids is an interesting discussion that we will have in this marvelous video. Before we get into our explanation, we have a small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
In order to create a new form or augment a specific ability, human attributes allow for the...
Who are zoonoids? We explain in detail. As we mentioned before, zoonoids are human beings who are biologically modified to possess superior physical powers, regenerative abilities, as well as immunity to various diseases. They are engineered such that they are capable of waging battles. The creators attempted to fuse a Guyver unit into a human being, but that experiment failed terribly because the resultant Guyver 0 rebelled against the creators and caused a lot of damage before being ultimately defeated by Arkenfell. At that point, the creators decided to abandon Earth altogether, leaving zoonoids to mate with normal human beings, resulting in dilution of their superior bloodline. Very few zoonoid subjects have surfaced over the years and have become the subject of several legends and stories. Despite this dilution in bloodlines, the zoolord Arkenfell began to turn human beings into zoonoids following the discovery of genetic engineering technology that the creators used in the form of a relic in Japan. The process of turning a human being into a zoonoid is not fully known. The human in question is subjected to a vast array of chemicals that reshuffle their genetic code. This results in a release of information that was already there in the subject, but in a dormant state. This is a very hit-and-miss procedure, and a lot of subjects die as a result. However, the process has become safer in modern times, and the survival rate is much higher. It is also assumed that there are ways to ensure the survival of important and high-profile subjects. The entire process takes no more than a day, while the subject is kept suspended in amniotic hyperoxidated fluid, being hooked up to feeding and monitoring cables. This process of zooification can be interrupted, and the subject will still become a zoonoid, but with a drastically reduced lifespan. An example of this would be Enzyme 1 and Enzyme 2, who died very quickly in the span of weeks and hours. There are several types of zoonoids that can be constructed, but the ones that are easily mass-produced are Greygol, Vaymor, and Ramatith. Greygols are power-hyper muscle-type zoonoids who are 15 times stronger than the average person. Vaymors are a type of bioblaster zoonoids who are not that physically strong but serve as organic artillery. They can shoot extremely powerful laser beams. Ramatiths are also power-hyper muscle-type zoonoids who have enhanced strength and resemble hairy goblins. Zoonoids physically are quite different from humans. Most zoonoids have a forward-leaning posture with bowed legs and stretched arms. They have no apparent genitals or excretory organs. Zoonoids also do not appear to eat and are only and solely focused on combat. The strength of zoonoids is far superior to humans, and physically some zoonoids can be 8 feet tall, like Greygols, who can weigh 300 pounds while being 15 times stronger than a human. The shape of a zoonoid skeleton is optimized for strength, and their bone as well as muscle structure are much better than humans. Many zoonoids have some sort of armor, which can be flexible, rigid, bulletproof, and even artillery-proof. Zoonoids can have claws and fangs. They can equip various weapons like venom, supercooled nitrogen, acid, and even lasers. The brain of a zoonoid has changed to become such that every zoonoid always feels like fighting. They are the ultimate warriors. On the outside, zoonoids can look like various animals like mammals, reptiles, arthropods, and birds. However, zoonoids can also appear outlandish, having no resemblance to any known creature. Finally, during death, a zoonoid's body disintegrates very rapidly, resembling the rapidity with which zoonoids transform from one form to the other. Marvelous story of zoonoids in the Guyver movies. The Guyver, 1991. The first Guyver movie was released in 1991 and is the story of a young man named Sean Barker who discovers an alien artifact called the Guyver unit. Transforming into the Guyver puts Sean at odds with the Kronos Corporation, the organization that creates zoonoids. The movie begins with a scientist on the run with a stolen Guyver unit. Here we see the first transformation of someone into a zoonoid. Lisker, the right-hand man of the president of Kronos, transforms into a zoonoid and kills the scientist. But before dying, the scientist had managed to hide the Guyver unit in a pile of trash. In this very pile of trash later on, Sean Barker finds the Guyver unit. As the movie goes on, Sean has transformed into the Guyver and is trying to rescue Mizuki, his girlfriend. Here again, zoonoids appear in the form of Lisker and his thugs. Sean, as the Guyver, is able to hold his own against the zoonoids, but Lisker manages to exploit Sean's damaged control metal. The control metal is a critical component of the Guyver and is located on his forehead, shaped like a sphere. This control metal does a lot of things, but first and foremost, it prevents the Guyver unit from eating its host alive. Since Sean's control metal is damaged, the zoonoids gang up on him and Lisker is able to rip Sean's control metal off his forehead. This results in the Guyver armor disintegrating into liquid, killing Sean in the process. Zoonoids are next seen when Balkis, the president of Kronos, shows Mizuki a gallery of zoonoids in an attempt to understand how Sean Barker activated the Guyver unit. In the meantime, Sean has regenerated thanks to the Guyver unit. He is able to battle and defeat Lisker and his gangs of zoonoids. The next zoonoid we see is a cockroach-like transformation, but the host, Max Reed, dies due to his system rejecting this new form. In the climax, Balkis reveals himself to be a zoolord. Zoolords are superior entities who serve as leaders and generals of zoonoid armies. Be that as it may, Sean is ultimately able to defeat the zoolord as well as ensure the safety of Mizuki. Thus, we see how zoonoids serve as a critical component in the first movie. Guyver, Dark Hero 1994. The second Guyver movie was much darker than the first one and had several scenes that depicted gore and brutality. The first zoonoid we encounter in this movie is called Volker, who battles Sean but manages to escape. Sean has become much darker due to him, as the Guyver, not knowing what to do with his power. Sean's girlfriend has also broken up with him as a consequence. Sean goes on an archaeological dig where he later learns that some of the people there are zoonoids. Sean manages to defeat them and squares off against their leader, Crane, who is also a zoonoid. Crane, however, turns into a Guyver zoonoid with a damaged control metal. Sean fights against him but cannot keep up. However, a shot to the damaged control metal causes Crane's suit to further malfunction, allowing Sean as the Guyver to rip off his control metal, causing Crane to liquefy and die.
You said Brazil!
Come on!
Types of zoonoids. There are several types of zoonoids. First, there is the power hyper muscle type. These enhanced muscle class zoonoids are the most common of all the types and can be seen as ground soldiers engaging in melee combat. Their muscle power far exceeds that of a human. Conventional weapons do not work well on this type of zoonoid. Power hyper muscle zoonoids are also quite well armored but typically do not possess special powers or bioweaponry. The most famous of the power hyper muscle subtype are Gregol and Ramatov, about whom we have discussed earlier. There are over 20 subtypes of power hyper muscle zoonoids. Then there are the bioblaster type zoonoids, who might be physically weaker than the power hyper muscle types but possess the ability to generate and fire lasers from their bodies. Very few subtypes like 4 of bioblaster zoonoids exist. Vaymore, about whom we discussed earlier, is the most famous of them. They are engineered as living artillery and provide range support with their lasers. Bioblaster zoonoids tend to be slower, bulkier, and much less agile than other zoonoid types. They are intended to remain at the back of the army, while power hyper muscle zoonoids lead from the front, not including scouts. The next type of zoonoids is aqua zoonoids, who are suited and adapted for underwater warfare. Following them are scout zoonoids, who specialize in recon and observation. They are fragile but are quick, smart, and stealthy. They are intended to advance ahead of other zoonoids Zoanoid forces to scout enemy locations as well as infiltrate enemy positions. Aerial Zoanoids are optimized for combat in the air and space. Hyper-Zoanoids are those advanced zooforms that have been created by Kronos and not the creators. They are relatively new and have been made with great care, detail, and observation. Their superior nature and template allow them to become intermediaries between normal Zoanoids and the exalted Zoolords. The most advanced Hyper-Zoanoids are powerful enough to go one-on-one against the Guyver. Hyper-Zoanoids have qualities that negate several of the Guyver's weapons. There are failed experimental Zoanoids created by Kronos co-founder Dr. Barkis. These are lost numbers. They are too optimized in the effort to make them more powerful than standard Zoanoids and are considered defective. They are retrospectively regarded as a stepping stone in the process of ultimately developing Hyper-Zoanoids. The enzyme Guyver killer type series of Zoanoids were designed by Kronos Japan specifically to kill the Guyver. Their blood carries a corrosive toxin that dissolves the bio-boosted Guyver armor. There are 3 versions of enzyme Zoanoids, with the latest being Enzyme 3. Enzyme 3 is much more powerful than its 2 predecessors, possessing the ability to fly as well as having claws and a stinger-tipped tail in order to inject the deadly toxin. Their lifespan is, however, about only 3 years. Enzyme 3 does not possess any personality or intelligence and is only capable of killing. There are other Zoanoids like Libertus, Malcold, Unis, and so on, who do not have sufficient details available about them to be classified under a particular category. There are also Zoanoids who are exclusive to the live-action Guyver films. This includes characters like Ramsey, Stryker, Volker, Crane, and so on. Marvelous verdict. Zoanoids play a crucial role in the narrative of Guyver, representing a significant threat to the protagonists while highlighting the potential dangers of genetic engineering, as well as the ethical dilemmas that arise from it. These Zoanoids are the base soldiers of the primary antagonists of the series, and are thus encountered frequently. Some Zoanoids are formidable opponents to the Guyver and can serve as proper obstacles in the Guyver's quest to stop the Kronos Corporation. Overall, our marvelous verdict is that Zoanoids are critical characters in the Guyver universe and lore, and must be studied and watched carefully in order to fully appreciate the narrative and underlying themes of the Guyver series. See you next time when we return with more Guyver goodness. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.